There we go. So good to see you. Uh, I don't think there's anyone here by accident. Anna is proactively putting up the prayers that we're going to use to begin. Sangye Churang Soke Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Chunen Gipe Sognam Gi Drola Penchir Sangye Drupa Shok. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, as in our class today. That includes also contemplating and meditating. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Drola Penjer. Sangye Churang Soke Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Chunen Gipe Sognam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupa Sho. And then a mandala offering to request the teachings in a sense, and also to create the karma to be successful in listening to the talk, participating in it, contemplating and meditating on it. By offering this ground, this mandala, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy such a pure realm. And then as a request to turn the wheel of Dharma, O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please send down a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained, of those to be subdued. Idam Guru Radna Mandalakam Niryatayami. And hi, Jennifer Suvash joined us. As Don Lopez mentioned last week in his lecture on Sunday, which is apparently still up on the on YouTube, on the YouTube, if you have the link, I don't think you can search for it. He mentioned that Jeffrey, I think, unless I'm confusing context, I think he mentioned that Jeffrey didn't like people to offer mandala at the beginning of his lectures. Wasn't there some comment like that, Paul, in that? So you shouldn't think that the offering of the mandala at the beginning, when it says, "Oh, holy and pure Guru," is that I'm thinking that is to me, we're thinking that it's to the Dharmakaya, our primordial Guru, who kind of affects us. I remember Lama Zopa Rinpoche mentioning when he taught, he always felt that, when he was in a good state, concentrating, that it was actually Lama Yeshe who was talking through him. What would you say in modern parlance? He was channeling Lama Yeshe. So you can think also, I'm channeling Lama Yeshe and the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche and, all of these great gurus Geshe Sopa, who've taught us, Geshe Jampa Gyatso and so forth. Okay, so we're going to begin with a little meditation, try to settle our motivation in a more experiential way. So when your spine is erect, place your mindfulness on the respiration to the exclusion of all other thoughts. Then if you've been successful in 7 or more respirations, calming the mind a little, turn to a more subtle object than the respiration, that object being the nature of the mental consciousness. Its conventional clear light nature. Whatever thoughts, whatever contents arise, rather than thinking of the content as being an obstacle to seeing that nature, you can think the very presence of this implies that my mind does not hinder the arisal of material into it, nor does it hinder, does it, retard the dispersal of that content back into the mental consciousness, the reabsorption of that back into the mental consciousness. This last lack of any obstruction to the arisal or reabsorption of material into the consciousness can be identified as the conventional Buddha potential, the so-called developmental Buddha potential, that on the conventional level shows that we can develop our mind, obtain all of the good qualities, eliminate all the faults, all of our worries, our shame, our sense of guilt and confusion. We don't need those states of mind. Whereas one Lama said to me, don't need unhappy mind. We don't have to dwell on them. And if we apply antidotes, or if we don't just simply not addressing them for some time, they begin to absorb back into the consciousness, and their fundamental causes, the afflictions, that's not enough to get rid of, to abandon the afflictions, simply not paying attention to them, but by applying their temporal and ultimate antidotes, with this very mind we have now, we can achieve Dharma happiness, real calm state of mind, oblivious of the chaos going on around us. But as the Buddha mentioned, the fact that we can observe this nature of our mind is because we have this auspicious moment, a life of leisure and endowment that was praised by the Buddha in so many sutras. As an opportunity to achieve liberation, or even at the lowest level, to create the causes to be reborn in the upper realms in the future lives, have a perfect human rebirth, more extensively to achieve nirvana with this very mind, at this auspicious moment. Or as the Buddha admonished us, not to be content with simply following his lesser vehicle to achieve nirvana for ourselves, but to consider entering the Mahayana, the cause of which is the mind generation, production of the mind of bodhicitta, a mind that is moved by compassion for sentient beings, love and compassion, and has taken the exceptional resolve, the laksam, to work for their benefit by ourself, to achieve enlightenment for their sake, to achieve that state of enlightenment, even if we develop bodhicitta, which is an incredible, if we were to have non-artificial bodhicitta, we talked about last week, chuma. If we were to have spontaneous or non-artificial bodhicitta, one that was spontaneously arising day and night, incredible realization if we were to achieve. But on top of that, to practice the Bodhisattva deeds, we need to engage, well, to achieve enlightenment, we have to practice the Bodhisattva deeds, the threefold Mahayana morality, but we have to collect the two, we have to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom. Merit meaning what we usually call virtuous karma, ordinary actions, and the collection of wisdom, accumulation of the collection of wisdom comprises the accumulated realizations of emptiness, insights into emptiness. We know little about either of those methods, either of those techniques to collect merit or wisdom, but they were explained well by Nagarjuna in his fundamental wisdom, by Chandrakirti in his commentary to that, Madhyamakavatara, and by Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary to Chandrakirti's commentary. So think, I'm going to participate today in this discourse on Gompa Rapso, illumination of the intent, illumination of the intention, with the actual purpose of achieving enlightenment for the benefit of sentient beings. That's my goal, my long-term goal. I'm going to listen, contemplate, and meditate on the material in order to accumulate the two collections to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay. Thank you. So, some variation of that is a technique you should cultivate so that when you hear discourses, whether it be Geshe Sherab teaching the, what is he teaching, the succession yoga right now, or Gendan teaching the Nagi Salam, or the Dalai Lama teaching, or any other lecture beforehand, because there'll only be some prayers at the beginning, generally. Beforehand, you want to set your motivation so that you are, by the force of that, by the inertia of that, it keeps on. Inertia doesn't mean only that you're stationary. When something's in motion, it has a tendency to continue to be in motion, right? If you have that motivation at the beginning, it can color the entire experience of your, listening to the teaching, participating in the discussion, whatever, so that it becomes incredibly virtuous, so that at the end, when you dedicate virtues of doing that, you have a lot of virtues to dedicate, can become very beneficial. So the particular sequence that I've laid out for you is not that unique. It might be very similar, but other lamas stress other things the fact that we've been circling in cyclic existence since beginningless time, that in all those times, even when we've had human rebirths, maybe occasionally perfect human rebirths, we wasted them out of laziness, or one of the kinds of laziness is attachment to some samsaric pleasures, power, wealth, reputation, love stories. So, you can, whatever resonates with your mind from the motivations that you've heard Lama Zopa give and other lamas give beforehand, try to develop your own sequence of meditations that can bring you to that artificial bodhicitta. That's the Chuma Mayimba. That's the not spontaneous bodhicitta, but actual, close to actual bodhicitta, actual real wish in your mind to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. It depends on so many different factors. You have to sort of develop them with effort, eventually through practicing in that, becoming familiar with that, with much, much work, maybe the development of karma binding also, and other techniques, you can actually develop spontaneous bodhicitta and become a bodhisattva. Okay, here's hoping. So, any questions? How are we doing? Mintu's here, Amy Krantz is here. Good to see them, or see their names anyway. No questions. Oh, okay. I'm not sure that's good. But anyway, Richard,
I
can
have
you,
a question, Venerable.
okay.
Did you ever address what you might have uh, obtained some research into what we were discussing last Saturday at the end of class?
About?
I've forgotten right now. I'm on the spot. Doris knows. I sent her a whole thing about it. Let's see. We were saying what fabricated might mean, and we were saying maybe it could.
Right.
You mentioned some stuff. Yeah.
Right. So I did do a little research on that, maybe a lot of research on that. That will be coming up right now also in our material. So I'll leave that for the class. But I wanted to ask Richard before I ask Mintu what his question is. Richard, can you give a little synopsis? Where are we in this study?
I assume you mean in the books.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't mean page number.
Right.
I
We're
mean,
in the discussion of the two truths, and I'm a little bit lost in the details, to be honest.
okay. Why did the two truths come up? I mean, it's obviously a topic in importance, but why did that particularly come up right now? And which of the two truths are we addressing first?
Conventional.
Conventional truth. Why did that come up?
I think we were discussing the second of the four of the tetralemma, the second one, which is the production from self, production from other.
Right.
So it came up in that in that context.
So who remembers
But
why?
I'm not exact. But now that you mention it, I'm not exactly sure what the connection is to that to the topic. I'm not sure I can articulate it.
Right. Mikhail, do you know why?
Yeah, but it's about production from other that it can yeah not be refuted by or be refuted by conventional mind, something like that.
John knows.
I don't know. I'll give it a. I'll give it.
Venerable George, from what I recall, right, the reason why we came into the two truths, the reason why we came into the two truths is because
Okay.
Go on.
Because it was stated that, hey, we don't need any truths. We conventional people, we ordinary people, we just see the phenomena and we know
We
it
don't
arises
need any
from others.
logic.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
you
right.
said you don't need any
logic.
truth.
That's right.
Yeah,
And-
we don't
and-
we don't need your Prasangika logics. Everyone knows conventionally that things are produced from others. That's the point. That's sort
Yes,
of the
that's the starting point.
So yeah, right, exactly. So from there, we enter into discussion of the two truths, conventional truth, to try to understand how conventional truth, in what circumstances, you can just depend on the world's statements, so-called conventional truths, and what is actually conventional truth. So that's the context. Okay, so that's good to remember where we are. So the last paragraph before where we're going to start today, and where we're going to start today, just to remind you, this new operating system, harder to get up there. So we're on, in Jimpa's translation, page 236, and in Hopkins' Final Exposition of Wisdom, if you have that book, that's on page 238. A few examples of dependent origination, comma, such as reflections in a mirror, comma, echoes, and so on, do not appear to be false, do not appear as false to those ridden with ignorance. That's the sentence we're going to start with. But just to give the context, the last paragraph before that, or the last phrase before that, maybe a couple of sentences, in Drimba's translation, it says, those entities fabricated by conceptualization, which remain untrue from the perspective of any of the three individuals. So when we're talking about, in this context, we're talking about three individuals that have some special insight. It means the Shravaka Arhats. What does he say here? Yeah, Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats. That means they have completely eliminated all ignorance, all klesha, all nyonmong, Tibetan, and the bodhisattvas on the pure bhumis, the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, which you could call, sometimes they're called bodhisattva arhats, because they have also eliminated finally, through the first 7 bhumis, all of the afflictions. So that sentence said, those entities fabricated by conceptualization, which remain untrue from the perspective of any of the three individuals, because they remain untrue from their perspectives, are referred to as merely conventional. So that sentence, Jeffrey Hopkins' translation of that was, those fabricated things, this is addressing Donnie's question also, when we were talking about fabricated or whatever, those fabricated things, which even though they do not inherently exist, are fabricated by thought Jeffrey says, to appear to be inherently existent, and which are not truths in the perspective of the three persons, are not truths in the perspective of their own obscuring consciousnesses, and hence those phenomena are called mere conventionalities. So we were playing around a little bit with that, whether they're, whether ignorance, what does it mean for it to fabricate these conventionalities? Paul, what do you think?
I'm sorry, I was rereading that paragraph. Please ask the question again, Venerable Drew.
So in Jim's translation, it says, these entities fabricated by conceptualization, which remain untrue from the perspective of any of the three individuals, because they remain untrue from their perspective. Jeffrey added onto that, he said, those entities fabricated by conceptualizations. Jeffrey added onto that, those fabricated things, which even though they do not inherently exist, are fabricated by thought, he says, to appear to be inherently existent. Are they, does the thought conceptualization in our own minds, does that cause them to, phenomena to appear to be inherently existent? Nadine is giving you a hint. Your eyes are closed.
Well, presumably.
Well, my opinion is that phenomena appear to be truly existent or inherently existent because of the imprints of ignorance. The conceptualization does fabricate some things. Say, for instance, it fabricates a certain kind of reality. People, you've run across people that are totally paranoid. They fabricated some kind of reality in their own minds that is not there at all. Could that be kind of what's being talked about here? David thinks so.
No, I would think those would be artificial. So that would be prior to the path of seeing, even. That would be right.
Right.
We're not talking about that here.
Those entities fabricated by conceptualization, which remain untrue. So you can leave off the three individuals and the path of seeing. When you have conceptualization, it fabricates. I'm getting a crank call here. Here we go.
It's Judy for the Police Officer Support Committee PAC, switching to pre-recorded audio.
Sorry about that. The police support organization. I pressed the wrong button. So conceptualization perceives this appearance of true existence, because the appearance of true existence occurs to the senses, also occurs to your mental consciousness, even when it's not referring to the senses, right? When it's analyzing other kinds of phenomena, there is an appearance all the time of inherent existence. How do phenomena actually exist conventionally, Jennifer? Do you know?
Well, they exist dependent on parts, causes, and conditions, and the imputation based on a valid basis.
Yeah, that's the part I'm thinking of. They exist imputedly. They have no findable existence. They have no true existence the way that they appear. But that appearance occurs because of the imprints of ignorance accumulated in the past, not particularly because of the present ignorance, but the present ignorance goes along with that, right? The word in Tibetan is zinpa. It grasps to that, or strongly grasps to that, shempa, another kind of term. And so in a sense, it's creating subjectively, by assenting to that appearance, it is fabricating a kind of reality that doesn't really exist. That's what I take that to mean. John, what do you think?
I have a question, something that you said, just to clarify, maybe I heard this wrongly. Did you say that the inherent existence appears to all of the sense consciousnesses, not just the mental consciousness?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So the appearance of for Prasangika, true existence and inherent existence are interchangeable.
Mhm.
For the Svatantrikas, this was one of the other questions from a couple of weeks ago. For Svatantrikas, what appears to the sense consciousnesses? True existence, or inherent existence, or neither? What do you think, Mikhail?
True existence does not appear to the sense consciousnesses, but inherent existence does appear, and it is correct.
For them, for their
Okay.
point of view.
Right.
From a Svatantrika point of view, conventionally, so that's what you're talking about when you're talking about the sense consciousnesses, apprehensions. Conventionally, phenomena appear to be inherently existent. That means they're findable within their bases of designation. And they are indeed, for Svatantrika, that's true. For Prasangika, that's wrong. Okay.
But they do appear to be inherently existent to the Prasangika, of course.
And for the Prasangika, phenomena appear to be truly existent, inherently existent.
And so in this sentence, he's also saying, though, just to be clear, that an Arya sees it, knows it to be false, while actually seeing it.
In this paragraph, it doesn't talk about that. It's talking about the three individuals who have actually eliminated all ignorance. But
Right.
but what you're saying is true. Aryas who have realized emptiness, even though they haven't eliminated in their own mind stream all ignorance, in their post-meditation, after having realized emptiness, whatever that might be, phenomena appear, and depending on their proximity to that realization, they have a remembering consciousness that these phenomena are empty of inherent existence. So they appear to those people as illusion-like, mirage-like, right? What do we talk? The two periods of meditation on emptiness are called what? Does anyone remember?
J-Top, what's that called? Yeah, aftermath,
Subsequent
samadhi, and
Yeah. Well, when we talk about the actual concentrations, we talk about the space-like meditation on emptiness and the illusion-like meditation on emptiness in post-meditation, in J-Top, after. In J-Top, you have that illusion-like meditation, but it isn't always necessarily there, that you can sort of, maybe at the beginning, your remembering consciousness of the realization of emptiness might degenerate a little bit. And so your own delusions, your own afflictions can still grasp onto that. But in general, those Aryas, they have, because they're Aryas, they've realized emptiness directly, and so they can realize phenomena as being like illusions. Maybe that's what you were referring to, John.
well, yes, but in appearing like illusions, they still appear. I mean, it's the going back to the analogy of the magician. It's the people in the audience who are able to be affected by the illusion,
Right, the spell.
but nonetheless know it to be an illusion, so that they don't, they're not.
Right. There's some old timers in the audience who've seen this show before,
You've seen the show,
in
right?
the setup. They knew it afterwards. They, yeah, man, this looks real, but I know. Yeah.
But they know for a fact that it's not.
So those might be more like these three individuals, because the Aryas who've realized emptiness but have not yet eliminated all of the afflictions when they have that remembering consciousness of emptiness, they can remember they realized emptiness, that phenomena are empty of true existence. That direct experience is not present other than as a remembering consciousness of it, other than a memory of it, right? In their post-meditation. So they can see those things as illusion-like. They can kind of scoff at that, but because there's still afflictions in their mind, there's still sometimes the possibility that those afflictions can arise. Anger can arise if someone scolds you, even though it is illusion-like. You should realize that it's actually empty. That when people criticize you, you can feel low self-esteem and so forth, until you've reached that eighth bhumi. It's getting less and less evidence of that as you get closer and closer, as more and more of the afflictions are eliminated. And of course, at the end, in the sixth, seventh bhumis, the afflictions that are still present are so subtle that for the most part, those Aryas are like what you're saying, that they know that these things are false. But here it's talking about the Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats and Bodhisattvas, because they remain untrue from their perspective, are referred to as merely conventional. So that's the starting point of what we finished last time. Okay, so Amy, yeah. You have a question?
Sorry.
You're just saying hi. We can't hear you. I can't hear you. Can't hear you. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
I don't understand why. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, there we go. We can hear you now.
Let me see is there anything I can do? Okay.
We can hear you.
Forget it then. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
For an Arya who has illusion-like awareness of an object, what is the illusion? Is the illusion there because the mental image is still there?
No, the illusion is there because of the memory. Like, for instance,
that manifest?
The illusion is there, like the example that John or Paul mentioned, like the...
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah, you have to turn up your volume, Amy.
Barely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Like the people in the audience who've been experienced the magician's show in the past, they know that this is an illusion, right? Because they remember that in the past. So the bodhisattvas who've realized emptiness, they have a remembering consciousness, a memory of realizing emptiness, that phenomena are actually empty of existing the way that they appear as truly existent. And so for them, this is an illusion. Okay, I think
I see. So you're saying it's memory, not a mental image.
Well, memory
but
is...
I don't know what memory is.
You don't know what memory is?
Different
memory
from
is
a mental image?
a mental factor, smrti or drempa, that we utilize in our meditation. It's also called mindfulness. In a certain sense, it's called mindfulness, and in some contexts, it's called memory. Memory means calling into mind something which experienced in the past. And that is a faculty that we have, which is related with the mental factor that we sometimes call mindfulness. You can.
I
because-
understand now. I understand what you're saying.
Okay. So Mintu, what's your
Thank you.
question? Yeah, thank you.
Oh, hi, Venerable. I have a question. So
Yeah, I know.
you know, like so when I see myself in the mirror, like mirror reflection, for example, right?
Right.
I can recognize it as not a real me, but it's not a reflective of me. But I don't remember when I first recognizing that reflection not as being me. So basically, is my recognition of my mirror image not as myself? Like, is it because of memory, or is it because
No, not necessarily. You can
because of conceptualization?
you've cut yourself shaving, or you've put the mascara on too much or too little or something like that, and you see it. You know that it's on your face, but the face in the mirror is not really you. It's just a reflection of you. It's just a simulation of you. So that's I have to praise your clairvoyance because it's just coming up next. Okay, so just be patient. That example. Okay, so continuing in Jimpa's translation. So the following passage is from the commentary, from Chandrakirti's auto commentary. So Jimpa's translation is, and this is Lama Tsongkhapa is paraphrasing Chandrakirti's commentary in these sections. It's not exactly word by word what Chandrakirti said, but he's paraphrasing it to a certain extent. Jimpa's translation says, a few examples of dependent origination, such as reflections in a mirror, thanks to Mintu's clairvoyance. A few examples of dependent origination, such as reflections in a mirror. Are reflections dependent originations? Yeah. Yeah, they depend on the mirror, your face, and enough light in the room, and so forth. A few examples of dependent origination, such as reflections in a mirror, echoes. Echoes occur because of your voice going out and hitting maybe some surface, some solid surface, and reflecting back. After some time, you hear that sound again. It doesn't have to be your voice. It could be an explosion, and then that you hear that explosion, and then later you hear the echo of that explosion when it bounces off another mountain or a wall or something like that. A few examples of dependent origination, such as reflections in a mirror, echoes, and so on, do appear as false to those with ignorance. Jimpa says those ridden with ignorance. The Tibetan just says marikpa dandemba. Just means that those that have ignorance. Maybe he's using the word ridden for a certain effect here that we'll see later. I'm not sure. They do appear as false to those with ignorance. Like ordinary people like Mintu and me. When we see our reflections in the mirror, we know that they're false in the sense of not being an actual face if I'm looking at myself in the mirror, right? Yet some examples, such as the blue color of material forms, other things such as the mind itself, feelings, and so on, appear to these ordinary beings, as real, as true, although they're not, right? They're not really true. They appear to be true. That's when we talk about the word true existence. Truth is is that which its mode of appearance corresponds to the way that it actually exists, right? And when you look at forms and colors and so forth, they, to a certain extent, you're right, they're blue, the color's blue, but it appears to be inherently existent, whereas it is not. So it's not, from a Prasangika point of view, it's not really true. So it says, yet some examples such as the blue color of material forms, the mind, feelings, and so on, appear to them with ignorance as real. The true nature that is the mode of being of all phenomena, Jinpa says, never appears to those ridden with ignorance. This is this Napa Tamchedu. Sarvarta. How should I pronounce that, John? Sarva Arta, the two are joined with a long A between the two. Maybe John ran out to have a cup of tea. Paul, how would you pronounce that?
You just blend it together. Sarvarta.
Sarvarta, right? So that's generally that's the Sanskrit of this. The true nature that is the mode of being of all phenomena, Jinpa says, never appears to those ridden with ignorance. Therefore, such intrinsic nature and those things that are false, even on the conventional level, are not conventional truths. So this is a little bit tricky statement that he's going to explain. Hopkins translates it a little bit differently. A few dependent arisings, such as reflections, echoes, and so forth, appear to be false even to those who have ignorance. Whereas a few dependent arisings, such as forms, such as blue and so forth, minds, feelings, and so forth, appear to be true. The nature that is the mode of being of phenomena. So this is talking about this when we're talking about svabhava, the nature, we're talking about here its ultimate nature. That means its emptiness. The nature that is the mode of being of phenomena does not appear in any way, Chippa said at all, I think, to those having ignorance. Therefore, that nature, okay, that means ultimate nature, and those that are false even conventionally are not obscurational truths. Is that right? What do you think, Richard?
Well, I wanted to ask you that. Is he saying that things like blue, blue feelings, minds, they're not even conventional truths? Is that what he's saying?
That appears to be what he's saying.
Yeah.
That appears to be what he's saying. But Chandrakirti wouldn't say that. Those are blue and so.
That's why I asked.
Right. Okay.
It seems pretty clear that that's what he's saying, and yet I always thought that blue would be considered a conventional truth.
Yeah, I would think so too. Yeah. So we have to have the little commentary on that. So in Jinpa's translation, coming right after that, the phrase, quote, a few examples, Chungze, I think in the Tibetan, Chungze means just a few, just a little bit. The phrase a few examples is translated as some. What is that? Gashik, I think, in the Tibetan. Yeah, Gashik. In Nakso's version, which reads better. So Nakso Lotsawa was the famous translator who originally translated the Karikas, and Paul helped me sort this out a couple of days, or yesterday or the last couple of days. Naxo apparently didn't translate the Basham, Chandrakirti's Basham, but just translated the Karakas. Is that right, Paul? And that was prior to the eventual famous translation of the Karakas and the Basham by Patsap. What was his name? Patsap Nimadrak? Can't remember. Anyway, the famous translator Patsap, who is attributed in the Tengyur, many of the translations are attributed to him. So he kind of revised or superseded Natsok's translation. But sometimes Lama Tsongkhapa prefers Natsok's translation, and that's for these Karakas. So he's pointing that out at this point. So the text continues. Reflections in a mirror, echoes and so on, do appear as false, refers to those perceptions being erroneous. Right? Is that true? They appear to be false to people even with ignorance, ordinary people that have ignorance of, and not talking about, being totally ignorant and not understanding anything, being ignorant of emptiness, not having realized emptiness. Reflections in a mirror and so on do appear as false to Mintu and me and to others that have ignorance, refers to perceptions being erroneous. So those perceptions that perceive those things to be true, a true face in the mirror, that's erroneous. This is a falsehood, or you could say this is false in the sense of something appearing as a face, but at the same time being devoid of being such, right? It appears to be a face, but it is not a face. It is devoid of being a face. So you could use that word void or empty, is empty of being a face, without having to talk about the meaning of emptiness when it's referring to true existence or inherent existence. We following? Making sense? Rachel, you following? Good. Karen? Okay. Okay, there we go. This is false, or this is a falsehood in the sense of something appearing as a face, but at the same time being devoid of being such. So emptiness of true existence in that context refers to its lack of being a real face, refers to its lack of being the real face it appears to be. Here it means the real face, the truly existent face that it appears to be. It does not mean the reflection's emptiness of true existence. So I think Jimpa's translation here is a little bit erroneous in my opinion. He says, so emptiness of true existence in that context. He shouldn't say emptiness of true existence. He should it just says dentong. Dentong sometimes means emptiness of true existence, but sometimes literally it just means emptiness of being true. So emptiness of true existence. In Jeffrey's translation, he says, or is it? Yeah. Therefore, a reflection of a thing such that although it is established as being empty of being a face, there is no contradiction at all in its being true in the perspective of obscuring consciousness. No, I think that's further on in the sentence.
Just before.
Say?
Just before.
Yeah.
Emptiness of truth.
Emptiness of truth, right. He doesn't say emptiness of true existence, as Jimpa says. So you should read that here emptiness of truth. So emptiness of truth in that context refers to its lack of being a real face, an actual face. You can't put makeup on the reflection in the mirror. Maybe you can, but if you move your face, the reflection won't have that makeup on it any longer. So emptiness of truth exists. So emptiness of truth in that context refers to its lack of being the real face it appears to be. It does not mean that the reflection's emptiness of true existence in the sense of its lack of existing by way of intrinsic characteristics. Therefore, even when the reflection is established as the absence of being a real face, dentong, there it just means it's not real. There is no contradiction at all in deeming it to be real from the perspective of the concealing mind, the concealer, the mind that grasps it to exist through its intrinsic characteristic. So from the point of view of ignorance that grasps to true existence, it is real, right? It appears to be inherently existent, the reflection itself. It's actually not so hard. It's just like adding all of these extra words sometimes obscures the meaning a little bit, I think. There's no contradiction at all in deeming it to be real from the perspective of the concealer, this samvriti, this moha, this ignorance or bewilderment that grasps it to exist inherently or through its intrinsic characteristic. So a mirror reflection is indeed a conventional reality, as Richard's intuition told him. Blue and so forth were conventionalities. Okay, how are we doing? Making sense? Richard, yeah.
It's a conventional reality to the concealer, to the concealing mind. I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah, it's true to the concealer, which is wrong, right? Because it's truth for a jerk, right? It's a conventional truth.
Right.
Right. Okay. So Nadine, how are you doing? Following?
Thank you very much, George. I have a question.
Yeah.
True nature, that is the mode of being of all phenomena, never appears to those written with ignorance. But
Right.
what about a yogic direct perceiver? Those written with ignorance never have this yogic direct perceiver?
Yeah. So does emptiness appear to a yogic direct perceiver?
Yes, can.
Well, when we're talking about yogic direct perceiver, that sounds a little bit like, I mean, we can use that in this context, but what you're talking about is the meditative equipoise directly realizing emptiness, right? Which is a yogic direct perceiver, but
yes.
Because yogic direct perceiver can refer to other realizations of gross selflessness and impermanence and so forth. So, yeah, so good question. Yeah. So again, I have to praise your clairvoyance because that's coming up in the next couple paragraphs. So Mintu and you share the clairvoyant gold medal today. Okay, so that's a good question. Is that it doesn't appear the way that Jeffrey and Jimpa translate it doesn't appear at all. It doesn't appear in any way. I preferred to say it doesn't appear in all ways. Sarva artha. Yeah. What was the Tibetan? Nampa tamshedu. Nampa tamshedu. It doesn't appear in Nampa tamshedu in all ways. In fact, that's the general translation of Nampa tamshedu and of Sarva artha. it doesn't appear in any way, or it doesn't appear at all, is in trying to take it in this context. Okay. So the statement here, continuing in Jinpa's translation, the next paragraph, the statement here in the commentary cited above, that mirror reflections are not conventional truths, which threw Richard for a loop before, should be understood as follows. So Richard also has to share in that clairvoyant thing, because explanation was coming up. From the perspective of the worldly conventions of those versed in language, something like a mirror image is false in that it is not a real face. That's what we say linguistically. That's false in that sense, because it's not a real face. And in that sense, it is not a conventional truth. Lama Khapa is explaining this is what Chandrakirti's statement that it was not a conventional truth was meaning. In that sense, it's not a conventional truth, because for the conventional mind, it is a falsity. So sort of like conventionally, it is not a conventional truth. Right, Paul? You agree? Yeah, something like that. Okay.
Yeah, because to the concealing consciousness, it doesn't appear to be true. It appears to be false.
Right.
And so therefore it is not a conventional truth.
I mean, there's some obscuring minds that haven't investigated, like a parakeet or a little child that sees its face for the first time, it appears to be true. But with any kind of experience, you know that's false. Okay. So continuing, it cannot be the case that a mirror image is not accepted to be a conventional truth. This was Richard's point, as defined in the line, and what is seen by false vision is a conventional truth that is taught. So this is referring back to stanza 623, the last line of that. We're on stanza 628 right now, which is kind of these two stanzas that talk about conventional and ultimate truth, 628 and 629. There's like a lot of explanation, even though they seem like just simple to understand in the first. So yeah, it cannot be the case that a mirror image is not accepted to be a conventional truth, as defined by the line, what is seen by false vision is a conventional truth. So this is seen by false vision. That is to say, vision that is under the influence of ignorance, right? So the senses that appears to be truly existent. How are we doing? Making sense? Okay, you have to go back and think about it a little bit. John, you're back. Good. Continuing in Jinpa's translation, if, in contrast, or you could say, on the other hand, what does the Tibetan say here? Deta mayimbar. So if it's not like that, I like to say, yeah, on the other hand, what Hopkins said, otherwise, okay, in contrast, on the other hand, otherwise, if it were contradictory for something to be a conventional truth because it lacks true existence on the conventional level, no, because it's devoid of truth on the conventional level, because it's false on the conventional level. When he says lacks true existence, that can confuse things. The Tibetan doesn't say true existence there. It says Dembar Mena. Kunsob to Dembar Mena. That means conventionally if it is without truth. That means if conventionally, if something is false, like a face in a mirror. In contrast, if it were contradictory for something to be a conventional truth because it is, we could say, false on the conventional level, like a face in a mirror, this would violate many presentations, such as the statement that there is no existence by virtue of intrinsic characteristics, even on the conventional level. Of course, the Svatantrika would not agree with that. They would say there is existence intrinsically, Rangit Senigi Druba, inherently on the conventional level. But in the Prasangika, in the main sutras, it says there's no existence by virtue of intrinsic characteristics on the conventional level, let alone the ultimate level. It would also contradict that negating true existence and establishing the absence of true existence. I think this is talking about actual analysis about emptiness here now. It's actually talking about true existence. That negating true existence and establishing the absence of true existence are undertaken on the conventional level. It would violate many presentations. Oh, wait a second. Maybe that's, let me read that section, what Hopkins says. Otherwise, if it were contradictory for something to be an obscurational truth, if it does not exist as a truth for a conventional consciousness, right, like a face in a mirror, this would contradict, one, Chandrakirti's statement that establishment of an object by way of its own character does not exist even in conventional terms. Okay, that's contradictory to this Svatantrika idea. Second, it would contradict all presentations done in conventional terms, including the refutation of true establishment and proofs of no true existence. So what does that mean?
I think Jeffrey's footnote there helps unpack that, George.
Yeah, I neglected to put it in my notes here. What is it? What does his footnote say there?
So
footnote E, I think, right?
Yeah, it says, if it were contradictory for something to be an obscurational truth, if it does not exist as a
That is
truth.
the note. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I
Okay.
was reading it there. Yeah, right. All presentations done in conventional terms, including all refutations of true establishment and proofs of true existence. So he has a footnote E, and that footnote reads, if it were contradictory for something to be an obscurational truth, so you have to keep these things in mind. For something to be an obscurational truth, if it does not exist for a truth, if it does not exist as a truth for an obscuring consciousness, right? This is the, going back to Richard's question, is his observation. If it were contradictory for something to be, let's say, conventional truth, obscurational truth, if it does not exist as a truth for this ignorant mind, this obscuring consciousness, this samvriti, this would mean that all obscurational truths, all conventional truths, must be truths for an obscuring consciousness. Well, like I say, that would mean that the reflection in a mirror would have to be a truth for an obscuring consciousness. And in the absence of any criterion for removing any of these that are truths for an obscuring consciousness from the class of obscurational truths, this would amount to saying that whatever exists for an obscuring consciousness is an obscurational truth. Since ignorance and obscuring consciousness takes the establishment of objects by way of their own character to exist, right? That obscuring consciousness believes that phenomena exist truly, inherently, by way of their own character. Such establishment would have to be an obscurational truth. Similarly, if inherent existence existed conventionally, it would be impossible to say that the refutation of inherent existence and the proof of its opposite are done conventionally. Whoa. Yeah, John, thank you for that. Yeah. David, yeah.
Is that just a lot of double negative ways of saying that it's easy to, you would have to slip into nihilism on one side and the opposite on the other side? I mean, it seems like the essence of that is, if even, I don't know if I can rephrase it with all the way it is, but that seemed like what it felt like.
Yeah, it seems like if you read it, it sounds like there's something simple there, but it's it sounds like it's more complicated. I think it's a little bit complicated. We will unpack that a little more on Monday's discussion group. But let's go back. Let's just finish that statement. So that was note E in Jeffrey's translation. And then the final paragraph says, or the final phrase says, therefore, stating that objects such as reflections, or claims that state that objects such as reflections, which even ordinary worldly consciousness understand to be mistaken, are not obscurational truths. To state that these are not obscurational truths, that they're not conventional truths, or truths for a jerk, right? That, but are mere conventionalities, when in fact they are both, he has in parentheses, appears to be the talk of those who have not formed understanding, like us, concerning the definite enumeration of the two truths. What does that mean, Mikhail?
Sorry, I'm not sure of your question.
Yeah, so he says that these kind of claims that objects such as reflections, which are understood as being false, right, by conventional minds, to say the claims that they are not obscurational truths, they're not conventional truths. What other truth could they be? All phenomena either have to be conventional truths or ultimate truths. Right? To say that they are not they are not obscurational truths, but are mere conventionalities, when in fact they are both, appear to be the talk of those who have not formed understanding concerning the definite enumeration of the two truths. What does that mean?
Sorry, what I don't get is that in the quote of the commentary we had, the last sentence is saying that things that are false, even on the conventional level, are not conventional truth.
Right. So that's being explained here, right? Slowly.
But here he's saying just the contrary.
Right. He's saying that this is actually the way it is, that they are. Well, say, my question is, what is the definite enumeration of the two truths? What does that mean?
There are only two truths. Everything is one or the other.
Yeah, anything that exists is either an ultimate truth or a conventional truth. an obscurational truth, if you want. So if it's not, if according to them, if it's not an obscurational truth, but just a mere conventionality, that would mean it was an ultimate truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Right.
baloney, right?
Is that it, Venerable George, or would they be saying there's three things? There's ultimate truths, conventional truths, and mere conventionalities.
Well, that's an argument that's coming up. Yeah, also, yeah, you also get the clairvoyant award. So the generally for the Shravaka Arhats, the Pratyeka and the Bodhisattvas and the pure bhumis, phenomena appear to them as mere conventionalities, but that doesn't mean that they're not conventional truths. There's no contradiction. They're still conventional truths because they know that other people under the influence of ignorance believe these things. Okay, so here it's just saying, if you were to say that reflections in a mirror, because they're false, are not, let's say, Jeffrey's translation, therefore claims stating that objects such as reflections, which even ordinary consciousnesses understand to be mistaken, are not obscurational truths, but are mere conventionalities. And then he has in parentheses, when in fact they are both. That those kind of statements that they're not obscurational truths, they're not conventional truths, appear to be the talk of those who have not formed understanding concerning the definite enumeration of the two truths on one hand. So that means, just as Mikhail said, all phenomena either have to be conventional truths or ultimate truths. So if you're saying they're not conventional truths, they're not obscurational truths, those two are synonymous, then they would have to be ultimate truths. So the reflections of your face in a mirror have to be, so that's like, shows their ignorance. And also, that appears to be the talk to those who have not formed understanding concerning also truth and falsity relative to the world, and truth and falsity posited by proponents of the middle way. Okay, so what is true and false according to the proponents of the middle way? Yeah. Louise.
True and false things. True, maybe things appearing the way that they actually exist.
Right. Their mode of appearance corresponds to their mode of abidance, or the way they actually exist. So that's the meaning of truth for the Madhyamaka. And so false is just the opposite. If its mode of appearance doesn't correspond to how it actually exists, that's false. It's like the smile of the car salesman when he's telling you this car is perfect, its mode of appearance, he's completely confident and smiling. Maybe some politicians like that also, it doesn't it doesn't correspond to the way things actually exist. So that's false there. So, but it says, they have not formed understanding concerning truth and falsity relative to the world. So that we just talked about truth and falsity for the Madhyamaka. What is truth and falsity for the world? David.
That would be the nihilism and eternity. Or I'm
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, that's just how I read that last piece. They'll fall on either side. There's no middle way. There's not everything is either true or everything is really false.
Oh, I'm not sure that. What do you think, Rachel? So what is true and false for the Prasangika, for the Madhyamaka, because it also includes the Svatantrika, is just as Louise said, its mode of appearance corresponds to its mode of existence. What is true and false relative to the world, Rachel?
Well, in my mind, it would be following cause and effect or dependent origination. But I'm not 100% sure when you're integrating this.
Well, let's say
Yeah.
a reflection in a mirror. Is a reflection in a mirror true for the world?
Yeah, you see the reflection. The reflection itself is true. It's not
No,
true
a
as
reflection in a mirror
a
is not true
face.
for the world. It's false because it appears to be a face, but it's not a face. I mean, it's not your face, let's say. It does appear also to be inherently existent, but that's not what the world is talking about, true and false. They're talking about just its its immediate appearance as being a face. So there's a subtlety in when you talk about true and false with regard to emptiness, with regard to Madhyamaka, true and false has a very particular meaning. Yeah, your cat is getting imprints there, John. Good, glad. And for the world, there's a slightly different meaning. So let's go back now to read what Jimpa said, because I interspersed Hopkins. Go on, John. Yeah.
Very quickly. So truth for the conventional world sees truth and falsity relative to the world. Is this just the truth that it's a certain thing? If you step it out in front of a bus, it will, hit you.
Well, I think it's similar to what Rachel was getting at, that the face in the mirror doesn't function as an actual face. You can't put food into the, I mean, you could put food into your mouth and then it looks like it's going into the reflection's mouth, but you can't take food and put it in the, try to put it in the mirror, the reflection. It doesn't function as a face. You can't, I guess you could kiss it. Parakeets try to kiss their own reflection, but it doesn't function. There's a little bit, Rachel was using the word, is not a dependent arising, but it's sort of similar to that. It doesn't function causally like a mirage. It appears to be water, but if you go there, you can't find any water to drink. You can't drink the water of a mirage. You can't, what? You can't do business with the son of a barren woman, even though you might think so. Okay, so let me just, before we take a little break, let me just read what Jimpa's translation of what we just read in Hopkins is. If, in contrast, it were contradictory for something to be a conventional truth because it lacks truth, it's false on the conventional level, like the reflection in a mirror, this would violate many presentations, such as, and I had enumerated them in Hopkins, here is all running on, such as the statement that there is no existence by virtue of intrinsic characteristic even on the conventional level, which is assertion by Chandrakirti. Not everyone agrees with that, right? Svatantrika say there is intrinsic existence on the conventional level. Or, it would violate presentation that negating truth and establishing the absence of true existence are all undertaken on the conventional level. That one's a little more difficult to understand. Maybe we can unpack on Monday, and so on. Therefore, the assertion that such things as mirror images, which are recognized as erroneous, false, even by ordinary everyday cognition, by someone who's not a baby or not a parakeet or something, they realize that they're erroneous. That means that there's not a real thing in the mirror image. And so on. Therefore, the assertion that such things as mirror images are not conventional truths, but are mere conventionalities, reflects an apparent failure to properly understand the following points. And those points are the exhaustive nature of the twofold division of truth. That means the exhaustive means there's a pervasion, as Mikhail has said, it either has to be conventional truth or an ultimate truth if it exists at all, right? The exhaustive nature, the pervasion. And failure to properly understand the distinction between the differentiation of truth and falsity from the perspective of the world and the differentiation of truth and falsity from the Madhyamaka's and the Madhyamaka's differentiation of truth and falsity. So it's just a different way of phrasing what, Jeffrey had stated there. How are we so far? It's a little bit tough, right? It sounds like it should be easy, but there's some things to consider. Let's take a short break. I will keep my audio on, and I'll listen if you want to debate with one another. This gives Sean a chance to debate with, I can't remember who you'd like to debate with, but let's take a little break. Okay, we had good discussion about milking the image of a cow, Chandrakirti, that will come near the end of the text. I think there's even something in the colophon or dedication of the text, or the translator's colophon at the end of Madhyamakavatara about Chandrakirti, who is renowned to milk the image of a cow or something like that. Minto, have you done that?
Done what?
No, go. What's your question?
My question was, let me recall for a second. So basically, like for example, when I see a book, for example, right, I see a solid object.
Yeah.
To an eye of a physicist, or maybe to some meditator who has attained the
Wait, say again.
To the eye, or maybe to the eye of like a meditator or yogi who has attained the 4 jhanas and above, they can probably see this as vibrating atoms, for example. And then
but that doesn't mean that they don't still see a book.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to figure out is that they basically, if you go higher and higher in meditative concentration, you can probably see like deeper level of atomic structure of the book, right? So I'm not
sure. Okay.
Yeah. So is the view of the atomic structure of the book the ultimate truth, for example, of the book true existence?
No.
Because
no one, even Hinayana Theravada doesn't say that's the ultimate nature of the book. No,
yeah.
come on.
so then what is a being who realized the ultimate nature of the book, see the book? It's like, there's no book at all that they see?
No, they see, no, they definitely see a book that appears to be truly existent, appears to be inherently existent, but they know from that remembering consciousness of realizing emptiness that it does not exist that way, so that they know that that is like an illusion, that kind of like cause them to chuckle or laugh, oh my gosh, look at that. It looks so real. It's like the experience in a dream. The dream yoga can be used for that purpose, that once you have lucid dreams, and if things appear in those dreams, I mean, you can do other things in the dreams also. You can create Buddha feels and make prostrations and create good karma, but if just appearances occur, a big lion occurs or a beautiful man or woman appears that might cause your sleep mind to rise attachment, get excited or something like that, you can realize that this is just a dream. And you can think in that dream, oh, that looks so real. That's part of the dream yoga practice in one aspect of it. There are many, many practices of dream yoga. But then when you arise from that sleep, you can graft that kind of understanding, just like a dream. These things look so real, but I know that they are empty of existing that way. In the same way that in the dream, if you have a lucid dream, you know you're dreaming, you could say, this is just a dream. This is not real, even though it appears so real. So in the real life, it's kind of a dream-like existence. You can see, yeah, these things look so real, just like in a dream. Okay, let's leave that. Okay, good question. Okay, how are we doing? We okay? Okay, so let's continue in Jimpa's translation. So after that last point, it says, the statement, quote, the true nature that is the mode of being of all phenomena never appears to those ridden with ignorance, unquote. So this gets back to someone's clairvoyance. One of you was asking about, oh, maybe Nadine was asking, what does that mean? The true nature that is the mode of being of all phenomena, because this is in that quotation also, right? Somehow Mikhail's image has become black and white. Did you change your camera? Oh, okay. Okay. The statement in that quotation, the true nature that is the mode of being of all phenomena, never appears to those ridden with ignorance, or doesn't appear in all ways to those who have ignorance. Marikpa Dandempa, or actually we have the Sanskrit of that. I can't remember the final part. Avidya, actually, it says avidya there, something. Okay. That also needs to be understood in a certain context, okay? Because Nadine was right, that what about the meditative experience of direct realization of emptiness by those who have not reached the pure bhumis yet, the bodhisattvas, let's say. Emptiness appears to them as completely correct, a direct realization of emptiness. Okay, so also needs to be understood in terms of cognitions tainted by ignorance. Because it is maintained that Aryas who have not yet fully abandoned ignorance, that means on the first, what does it say here? Aryas, that means on the sixth, seventh, the first, the first to the seventh bhumi, from the first through the seventh bhumi. Those are all Aryas, right? They're not in the pure grounds yet. For it is maintained that Aryas who have not yet fully abandoned ignorance, they're still in the process of abandoning the subtle kinds of ignorance. They do realize suchness through direct perception. They have direct realization of emptiness. Now, although post-equipoise, as John was pointing out, the Tibetan term is cheto, after, actually it means, literally means after.
You say subsequent attainment, right?
Subsequent attainment, after attainment, yeah, subsequent attainment, literally Topa means like it can mean attainment. So that means you, in the meditative equipoise, you've attained realization of emptiness. Subsequent to that, now, although post-equipoise states of the wisdom of the Arya's learner stages, the gnosis of Arya's on the learner stages. So gnosis is the English translation of an English translation of yeshe, which is sometimes Jeffrey earlier translations used to translate as exalted wisdom, as opposed to prajna or sharab, which he just called wisdom. So that's the yeshe, is that a term that's used not just for like the 10th Bhumi Bodhisattva's special practice, but also means any kind of realization on the Bodhisattva path, deep realization. So that is talking about wisdom. So although post-equipoise states of the gnosis of Aryas on the learner's stages, Suvash, what are the learner stages? You don't know, okay. Jennifer, do you know?
I would just guess from context, the 1st to 7th bhumis.
Ah, you might think that, huh? Louise, what do you think?
Would that be the path of preparation? Entering the path of preparation, maybe? No,
No.
I'm close.
Well, remember what the paths are called: path of accumulation, path of preparation or connection, path of seeing, path of insight, path of meditation. What's the 5th path called?
No more learning.
No more learning, right? So they're no longer learners on that path. What have you achieved on the Mahayana path? What status do you have on the Mahayana path of no more learning, Paul?
Buddhahood.
Yeah, Paul, you sounded just like, oh, I was thinking I was asking John, but it was Paul. Yeah, you did answer. I was thinking I was asking John, and I was thinking Paul answered for you. No, I did ask Paul. Yeah, so a no more learner is someone who is either an arhat in the Hinayana path. It's like graduation, right? Learners are anyone before that. So from the beginning, even before the path, anyone is still a learner, right? There are learners and there are no more learners. There are students and there are graduates. You might say that. The path of graduation.
But wouldn't it still have to be in the path of seeing because they're talking about Aryas?
So do Aryas only exist on the path of seeing?
I thought that's what an Arya was.
That's where you first become an Arya.
Path of meditation also.
Yeah, the path of meditation, which, as soon as the first bhumi is finished, you enter into the second bhumi, the path of meditation, when you start to eliminate the innate afflictions. On the path of seeing, you only abandon the artificial or intellectually formed delusions or klesha, right? On the path of seeing. You become an Arya then because you've realized emptiness directly, but that realization was not yet powerful enough to abandon the innate afflictions, the ones that are naturally occurring without having heard any kind of teachings, right? Those are abandoned on the path of meditation. Right, Paul? Sean, you follow?
Yeah, I thought you were just saying, though, that it was anyone before being a Buddha.
Learners, yeah. Learners.
But aren't they specifically talking about Aryas on the learner stages?
Yeah, but that, okay. So the statement that the true nature that is the mode of being of all phenomena never appears to those ridden with ignorance, those having ignorance, also needs to be understood in terms of cognitions tainted by ignorance. For it is maintained that learner Aryas who have not fully abandoned ignorance through direct perception, or it doesn't say learner Aryas. So it is maintained that Aryas who have not yet fully abandoned ignorance do realize suchness through direct perception. Now, although post-equipoise states of the gnosis of Aryas on the learner stages and the views of ordinary beings realizing suchness, since they are tainted by ignorance and its habitual propensities, do not perceive ultimate truth directly. It is not the case that they do not perceive it at all. Okay, let's go through that again. What does that mean? Although post-equipoise states of Aryas, let's say learner Aryas means, because who is a non-learner Arya? Richard, do you have an idea?
A non-learner Arya, that would be a Buddha, right?
Yeah. In fact, we say an Arya Buddha. So when we talk about Buddhas, sometimes we can just talk about Buddha, but when you talk about Arya Buddha, that refers to a person who is a Buddha. Because, for instance, the Svavavikakaya, the nature body, is that Buddha? Is that an Arya Buddha? No, it's just the name. It's just the, anyway, a lot of discussion about these things. Yeah. So you're right. So when it's saying here, learner Aryas on the learner stages, that means from the first bhumi through the 10th bhumi. So Aryas there. They're all Aryas, even on the pure grounds, right? In post-meditative states, so their gnosis, their wisdom, their special wisdom, which is kind of like insight that's remembering emptiness in the post-meditative states, as well as the views of ordinary beings realizing suchness. Ordinary beings here is eliminating what?
Direct realization of emptiness.
Means they're not Aryas.
Right.
So here, when we say ordinary beings, we say soso kewo. So there are two different categories. So we say learners and non-learners. Learners are those that are on the path, you say like students. Maybe you would have to start it from the path of accumulation. I'm not sure. But anyway, on the path, and no more learners are the end product, either arhats or Buddhas, right? Then there's another category, ordinary beings and Aryas. So ordinary beings are beings that are not yet Aryas. Like that includes anything from dogs, gnats, you know. Oh, sorry, cats. Sorry, kitty cat. They're ordinary beings until they've realized emptiness directly, in which case they are now superior beings. They are Aryas. Remember, that's kind of the etymology, kind of the meaning of Arya, superior being. Okay, so since they are tainted by ignorance and its habitual propensities, no, they're not all tainted by ignorance, right? They're all tainted by the imprints of ignorance, or what he calls here ignorance and its habitual tendencies. are they tainted by ignorance? All of them?
No.
Not the
Learner
pure ground
artists?
bodhisattvas.
Pardon?
Not the pure ground bodhisattvas.
Right.
But they still do have bakchak. They still
They do have the
believe.
baksha. So what is the, we'll finish that sentence. They do not perceive ultimate truth directly. It is not the case that they do not perceive it at all. So this is talking about post-meditation, right? Learner Aryas, they've realized emptiness in meditative equipoise, but now they're in post-meditation. They don't realize emptiness directly. Their gnosis, their wisdom, and the views of ordinary beings realizing suchness, that means before the Arya stage. So what kind of realization would that be? Nadine, what kind of realization would that be if they haven't realized, if they're not Aryas, ordinary beings?
On a path of accumulation and path of meditation, preparation.
Yeah, well, it would be conceptual realization.
Yes, conceptual.
Yeah, so so what are we talking about? And the views of ordinary beings realizing suchness. So they can realize emptiness or suchness, but before the Arya stage, they've only realized it conceptually, right? Since they are tainted by ignorance and its habitual propensities, they do not perceive ultimate truth directly in that post-meditative equipoise, let's say. And even the ordinary beings, even in their meditative equipoise, it is not the case that they do not perceive it at all. Okay, let's go back and see how Jeffrey Hopkins translate that, because I think that gives a better translation here. So if you're looking at Hopkins, this is on page 240 in the final exposition of emptiness. Let me read it from this screen. It's bigger. Okay, so this paragraph in Hopkins' translation is also Chandrakirti's statement that the nature wait a second. Yeah, so in Jimpa's translation, the true nature. So here it just says, in the Tibetan, it just says Rangshin, just Svabhava. Chandrakirti's statement that the nature, which Jeffrey brackets as meaning emptiness, that means, things have different natures. They have a conventional nature, an ultimate nature, and so forth. But in certain contexts, when you talk about nature, it's referring to the ultimate nature of emptiness. So the nature does not appear in any way to those having ignorance. That's the statement that Nadine was concerned about before. So Jeffrey's translation is, this statement is in consideration that emptiness does not appear to consciousnesses that are polluted with ignorance. And is not in consideration of persons having ignorance. Think about what this means. Since he asserts that superiors, Aryas, on the first through seventh grounds, who have not fully abandoned ignorance, directly realize suchness. Also because a learner's superiors, when we talked about Arya learners, right? Learner superiors, pristine wisdom, their gnosis, subsequent to meditative equipoise. So they're in post-meditation. They're a superior, but they're not yet a Buddha. You have to put learner there because If you talk about a Buddha, the situation is different, right? Also because a learner superior's gnosis, their pristine wisdom subsequent to meditative equipoise, and a common being's viewing consciousness of suchness are polluted with ignorance and its predispositions. Learner superior, oh yeah, right. Yeah, so this is the question that I was asking Paul. I think Paul was agreeing with me that seemed a little bit wrong there. A learner superior's pristine wisdom subsequent to meditative equipoise and a common being's viewing consciousness of suchness are polluted with ignorance and its predispositions. Emptiness does not directly appear. And then he has note A, ngonsumdu. Okay, maybe the final note B will help this out here. Where is that? So in post-meditation and to the ordinary beings who have not realized emptiness yet, they're ordinary beings, they're not Aryas, emptiness does not directly appear to their consciousnesses. That part's okay. I'm not sure about the polluted with ignorance and its predispositions, but anyway.
Venerable?
Yeah.
Jeffrey Hopkins bracketed just the sentence before superiors bracket on the 1st through 7th grounds. So in that understanding, the following sentence is correct.
Right. Okay, so that helps. But right, so they would be polluted by ignorance and the predispositions of emptiness and the predispositions of ignorance. Right. Sorry. Thank you for that, Mikhail. Does that also accord with you, Paul? That bracketed thing there. So if you don't say that, if you also included superiors, well, it says who have not fully abandoned ignorance, directly realize. No, well, that's talking about the earlier thing, Mikhail. Also because a learner superior's pristine wisdom subsequent to meditation, if you also put that there, the proviso that they are
non-pure grounds.
Not pure ground. It doesn't say that in the second paragraph, but maybe it's implied. So where is it? That does not directly appear to those consciousnesses, but it must be asserted that in general, ultimate truth, in other words, emptiness, does appear to those consciousnesses. So that has note B. This is why I think Jeffrey's translations are very, very useful in this context because he has many kinds of explanations. So note B says, there are conceptual consciousnesses explicitly realizing emptiness among a learner superior's pristine wisdom subsequent to meditative equipoise. What does that mean? John, is your camera just off or are you off taking care of the kids again? Okay. What does that mean, Richard? There are conceptual consciousnesses explicitly realizing emptiness among a learner superior's pristine wisdom subsequent to meditative equipoise. This really calls on a lot of knowledge that you, just to explain that sentence, that you hopefully have accumulated. Who wants to make a stab at it? What does that mean? Jennifer? Doris?
I'm sorry. Oh,
Subsequent attainment.
Well, let's say Jennifer first. Jennifer.
No, I'm sorry. Could you just repeat there? Conceptual consciousness is explicitly realizing emptiness along a learner's. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that last part?
Right. I'm sorry. This is note B on the bottom of page 240 in Jeffrey Hopkins' translation. There are conceptual consciousnesses explicitly realizing emptiness among a learner superior's pristine wisdom, their gnosis, their consciousness, subsequent to meditative equipoise. That means in post meditation. What does that mean?
So I'm just guessing, but the learner superior's pristine wisdom. So that is any Arya from the 1st to 10th Bhumi. And you're talking about pristine wisdom subsequent to meditative equipoise. So that's the illusion-like state after meditative equipoise. And I'm wondering, is the conceptual consciousness explicitly realizing emptiness, does that just refer to what you mentioned before about the remembering consciousness?
So in post-meditation, when they're not directly realizing emptiness, it isn't always illusion-like meditation on emptiness. They can go back into they can go back and analyze emptiness conceptually, the same way that someone would analyze emptiness conceptually before realizing it directly.
Thank you. So that is that like the thing you mentioned before, the remembering consciousness conceptually meditating upon emptiness? When Amy was asking.
So it wouldn't have to be a remembering consciousness. There are conceptual consciousnesses. Okay, so in post-meditation, by definition, it's not a direct perceiver, a mental direct perceiver. It's understanding things conceptually, either with a remembering consciousness of emptiness, or again, analyzing emptiness that explicitly realizes emptiness. So explicitly here, I don't have the Tibetan. This is probably, that note is probably from Jamyang Shepa's commentary. Usually that means, as opposed to indirectly, explicitly rather than indirectly. So indirectly might be like a remembering consciousness. Directly or explicitly realizing emptiness, that would mean that they've gone into some conceptual analysis with a combination of shamatha and vipassana. They're analyzing emptiness, and they have a conceptual realization of emptiness, explicitly, subsequent to meditative equipoise. So why is that mentioned here? Because that's note B. Go on.
Isn't explicit realization the fact that the object you're realizing is appearing to you? I mean,
right.
If you understand pot as a product, you explicitly realized being a product, but you implicitly realize being impermanent. So impermanent doesn't appear, but it is product that is appearing.
Right.
And so I think that's why it's saying that ordinary beings, they can have a conceptual, explicit realization of emptiness. So Khapa is showing that you cannot say that emptiness never appears to those with ignorance.
Right. Good point. So I think that's continuing in the exactly what you said is, again, you get another clairvoyant award for in the next sentence here. Also, a common being's viewing consciousness of suchness is necessarily a conceptual consciousness explicitly realizing emptiness. The basic rule, Jeffrey says, is that any object explicitly understood must appear to that consciousness. which is what Mikhail was pointing out to us. Wow, John. Yeah, what do you think?
This hasn't, well, maybe I missed it, but it seems like one of the concerns that's lurking here is also that you be able to make claims about the nature, that language has the ability to make truthful claims about conventional truth and ultimate truth. Because going back, is that correct? If you go back to the previous paragraph, which Thupten Jinpa translates an assertion that such things as mirrors as erroneous even by ordinary everyday cognition are not conventional truths, but mere conventionalities. If they are mere conventionalities, then language, it's not possible to even make a truthful claim about anything.
I think I wouldn't agree with that. So for the Bodhisattvas on the pure grounds and the Arhats, Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats, they've eliminated all ignorance. And again, that's coming up in the next section. They say the three classes of Aryas, that means these special classes. They're not just ordinary Aryas. They're learners, but they're on either the Bodhisattva pure grounds or they're no more learners in the case of Arhats. Bodhisattvas on the pure grounds are not called, even though they're called Bodhisattva Arhats, they're not called no more learners because they're still students of enlightenment. Okay, so anyway, those beings, what occurs to them in post-meditation, phenomena appear to be inherently existent, appear to be truly existent, but because they know that they are illusion-like, because they've realized emptiness directly, but in addition, because they've eliminated all ignorance, for them, they are mere conventionalities. For them, they are not conventional truths. But that doesn't mean that they don't know that does not mean that for those three kinds of beings, that those phenomena are not conventional truths in general. For them, they're not conventional truths. They're not, because they no longer, or they're no longer, they're not truths for an obscuring mind, because they no longer have an obscuring mind. They've eliminated all of the marikpa, all of the klesha, right? They've abandoned it. So they're equivalent to arhats. So the arhats the same way. So they perceive the phenomena as mere conventionalities, not as conventional truths for them. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that they don't know that they are conventional truths for others. So that's another kind of discussion that's coming up just after this. Okay, good point to stop. We're already 3:15. What do you think? Anna, what does Anna say? Course materials, Dharma, office hours, so forth and so on. So, what can I have? What didn't ask? Sean, how are you doing? Your eyelids are drooping. You had to take your daughter to basketball games?
No, something set off my allergies though, so I've been sneezing and blowing my nose the whole time. So it's been distracting.
So you're following more or less?
Yeah.
It's worth going back over this. Anyone have any questions before we end? We'll delve into some other points. We'll also talk about Mikhail's question on that we didn't mention in class about the fourth bhumi, bodhisattvas. We'll talk about that on Monday, and we'll unpack some of these other things. So let's finish with some dedication prayers. Anna, if you'd like to put up. So good. It's good to remember, we tried to set a motivation at the beginning. Even without the motivation at the beginning, there was a temporary motivation while we were practicing, listening and contemplating and, of virtue. But because of that bodhicitta motivation at the beginning that sort of encompassed all of the practices, we created an enormous amount of virtuous karma. So due to these virtues, gewadi, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha, Lama Sangye Drubyurne, and lead all migrators without exception. It doesn't say all, and lead migrators without exception. That means, even Trump, even your worst enemy, lead them into that enlightened state. So that's very, very useful, very important to think of, when it says malupa, without exception. You leave one person out, I'm going to lead everyone except for George into enlightenment. That's not bodhicitta motivation. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. By implication, even though this is a prayer, you can think this is a dedication due to these virtues. And may that which has arisen, whatever, similitude, artificial bodhicitta that we have had, may it not diminish, but keep on increasing. Then the prayer for the quick return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's reincarnation, or the quick return of Lama Zopa, quick appearance of his reincarnation. Peerless teacher, assembly. I think peerless teacher here refers to Buddha, Tomba, probably. Peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones. That means bodhisattvas, shravakas, and pratika Buddhas. The conqueror Losang, which is another way of saying Lama Tsongkhapa, who is the spiritual father and his two sons, together with your lineages, all the objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please now bestow the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. So that means upholding, through explaining the teachings, giving teachings, lungs even, and then explaining the words and so forth. And in terms of practice, actually doing the practice, that others can emulate, you, Lama Zopa, wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the conqueror's teachings, the Buddhist teachings, and for the welfare of mother migrators. You suddenly departed to peace, suddenly passed away. At this, I lost hope. I was devastated. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the Triple Gem and the great waves of bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas. So those are truths. We're calling on the power of the truth. May the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And then for all of our spiritual friends, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging through skillful means, moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends, please live long and stable lives. I make this request. Okay. And remember, just in your prayers, the young man, son of some Vajrapani former students, their son, Keldan. So the father was Tibetan, the mother was Western. He committed suicide a couple of days ago, and the family is grieving. Shanka asked if we would remember Keldan Sering. Also Diana Abramo, who's still recovering. Ron, who's still recovering, who's right here with us. And who is the other? Oh, and River, the grandson of David, MacLiz, and Karen. He's had a burst appendix in Arizona, and he's just leaving the hospital today. So hopefully may have avoided sepsis and other things. So if you could think of them in your prayers. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing some of you, maybe a lot of you, on Monday. We should have a good discussion. But definitely next Saturday, read ahead, go back, have some good questions, and see you soon. Take care.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you.
Thank you to
Thank
all of
you.
you.
George.